The number of students attending university is increasing, with 2.2 million people enrolling in 2016. This has led the graduate job market to become increasingly competitive, forcing many graduates to go unpaid.
Getting your head down and graduating with a good degree is no longer enough. More and more graduates are relying on unpaid internships to start their careers.
I spoke to two intern coordinators to find out more.
With the way the job market is now, there's probably less and less jobs available straight away out of university for them. So obviously gaining experience any way that's possible and just going into work is a better way to actually develop and get through further in your career. So if you can just go into any job to begin with, you can sort of work your way to where you want to, and you can get into other jobs easier than if you're unemployed. Having experience is a key. So just because an opportunity isn't paid doesn't mean you shouldn't take it. It just depends on what kind of opportunity it is. I wouldn't expect somebody to do something that's not necessarily relevant to what they're looking to do in the future unpaid. But if it was something that was relevant and something that really would provide the exact experience that they're looking for, then I'd expect them to sort of take an unpaid one.
It's really important for graduates to gain necessary experience through internships. It will help them to progress into a graduate level career afterwards. Something that we find, we work with quite a lot of graduate employers, so they're not just looking for a degree that graduates have, they're looking for those skills that people gain from gaining previous experience as well. So rather than graduates going straight into graduate level employment, which can be quite difficult, the internships generally help to try and bridge that gap. They'll gain some really good necessary experience in an internship first, and then that really helps them to progress into a graduate level role full-time after that.
Sasha Morris, a celebrity reporter at the Daily Star, started her career with a 3-month unpaid internship at a women's health magazine.
I just saw it advertised. I think they put a thing up on Twitter, and I just responded to it, and then kind of assumed that they'd at least pay expenses, because I was going to have to move. It was in London, in central London, so I was going to have to move. But yeah, they didn't offer expenses either, so I just went for it just because there was nothing else available.
So do you think as a graduate you kind of have to take unpaid internships?
I think in journalism, yeah. It depends on what you're going into, but journalism, I think you would have to be like extremely talented or lucky to be paid straight away. Especially if most people want to go into, like girls want to go into magazine sort of stuff, or boys with the newspaper stuff. I don't think that they would take people on straight out of uni with not much experience and pay them. I just don't think it would happen.
Research estimates that there are 21,000 interns working in the UK at any one time, and that 31% of university graduates working as an intern are doing so for free. So that's roughly around 7,000 people going unpaid.
If you're an unpaid intern living in London for a 6-month period, your estimated living costs are just over £6,000, with the largest expenditures being on rent and bills. After excluding travel costs, which some employees provide, total outgoings remain at around £5,560, or £926 per month.
Even with minimum wage, this would only barely cover the cost of living in London. However, the London living wage of £1,479 would cover their outgoings while also providing them a better, sustainable life.
I think 99% of people couldn't do it. It was only because when I think second year of uni, I thought I want to move to London, so I got a job and specifically saved all of the wages so that I could move and have like money behind me for when I needed to pay rent. But it was super expensive. I mean, obviously rent's not cheap. I picked a place that was close to where I was working, so I didn't have to pay travel. But anyone else that I've spoken to, they just wouldn't be able to afford it.
One graduate I spoke to had to leave their 5-month unpaid internship at a PR firm as the costs simply became too much. They have asked to remain anonymous to avoid any repercussions on their career.
It became really expensive, and I was having to work weekends to pay for travel and rent, but I carried on with it because I was struggling to find a job elsewhere. After the first month or so, I was starting to be given more and more responsibilities. I asked my boss if he could start paying me, but each time I was told there wasn't any money for it, even though they kept gaining new clients. I thought they would offer me a job when a paid employee left, but he was replaced with another unpaid intern. This was kind of the last straw for me, plus it was too expensive to be working for free for that long.
I spoke with Alex Shelbrook, an MP who proposes a blanket ban on all unpaid internships over 4 weeks.
My background is one of a comprehensive school education, and my sister as well, and just through hard work and buckling down, we were able to achieve the careers we wanted to achieve, hers in medicine, mine in engineering, and then politics. I'm worried that those opportunities for young people are disappearing, the same opportunities I had, because my parents were teachers, there wasn't a huge amount of money around. I couldn't have afforded to work for a year, up to a year for free, and neither could my sister, and I worry that talented children are starting to lose out in this modern phenomena of effectively, in my opinion, what is modern slave labour. Well, the reality is that you're limiting the pool from which you draw on, and up to half of people who are offered an internship turn it down on financial reasons, and then you're getting into sort of the top 10% who can actually afford to do an unpaid internship with no worries about money at all. That means that you're not even digging into 90% of the talent pool that's available, and that's got to be bad for Britain.
The Sutton Trust, a London-based research group, agree with Alex Shelbrook's views. They believe that unpaid internships enforce a class ceiling and are unfair to those who can't afford to live in major cities.
Unless you're from that city, or you have relatives, or you have connections in that city, there are substantial costs associated with living there, and if you're not getting paid, that means access to those internships are only being are restricted to people who have better backgrounds, whose family can pay for them to get that experience.
Alex Shelbrook put forward a private member's bill in an attempt to place a blanket ban on these internships. However, this bill was blocked.
Many believe that some MPs are blocking this bill because they themselves utilise on unpaid interns.
This is an issue which is opposed on the left and right of politics, and I think that that's a worrying consideration as well. Many people here don't pay their interns, which I think is a disgrace.
The people who are voting it are people who could potentially be held up as or accused of hypocrisy. So that has, I think, slowed progress on the topic over the last few years. But from my sense, I'm optimistic that this is an idea that's gaining more and more currency, both in the kind of wider conversation, but also among politicians and in Parliament.
The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority stated that although some interns are paid, they do not differentiate between unpaid interns and unpaid volunteers. Therefore, the exact numbers of those undertaking unpaid internships in Parliament is not available. However, in 2016, there were 199 people working for Parliament and MPs unpaid.
Without MPs voting for a blanket ban on these internships, the graduate job market will still be one that relies on unpaid work. This means that regardless of degrees, many graduates will only be able to follow their chosen career path if they can afford to work unpaid.
We're not talking about massive money, we're talking about paying the national living wage. The reality is that after 4 weeks, which is where I think the ban should come in, 4 working weeks, after that you should be paid. Because what are you really doing in week 5 that you wouldn't be normally paying someone to do? And that exploitation is actually bad for Britain. It's not allowing people with the talent to come forward.